What would you do if you saw a child lost in a sea of strangers? Helpless, terrified, completely alone. Would you step in, even if it meant breaking the rules? For centuries, the Queen's Guard has stood motionless, unshaken, unwavering. Their duty is absolute. No movement, no reaction, no breaking protocol. But today, something happened that no one expected. A little girl vanished into a restless crowd outside Buckingham Palace. Her father's frantic calls were drowned in the noise. And then, something extraordinary occurred. A soldier trained never to flinch faced a choice: obey orders or break centuries of tradition to save a child. What happened next left hundreds in stunned silence. Cameras flashed, gasps filled the air. But the real shock? It wasn't just the child in danger. Stay with us until the very end, because this is a story you won't believe. Before we dive into this moving story, take a moment to comment below where you're watching from today. We love seeing viewers from all around the world, and if you enjoy powerful real-life stories like this one, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an unforgettable moment. Now, let's get into the story. The sun glows softly over Buckingham Palace, casting long shadows over the historic grounds. The air hums with excitement as tourists from all over the world gather, their cameras raised, capturing the moment. Voices mix in a variety of languages, creating a lively atmosphere as people chat and admire the grandeur before them. Among the crowd, 6-year-old Emily Parker grips her father's hand tightly. Her eyes sparkle with excitement as she looks up at the towering gates, her small frame bouncing with anticipation. "Daddy, look, they're wearing the big fuzzy hats," she giggles, pointing at the Queen's Guards in their striking red tunics and tall bearskin caps. Her father, Daniel Parker, an American journalist visiting London for work, smiles warmly. "It's right, sweetheart, they're the Queen's Guards. They stand super still because it's their job to protect the palace." Emily's eyes widen even more, completely mesmerized. "Do you think they ever blink?" she whispers in awe. Daniel chuckles, ruffling her hair. "Maybe when no one's looking." The excitement in the air grows as a voice rings out over a loudspeaker, signaling that the changing of the guard ceremony is about to begin. The crowd tightens, eager for a better view. More tourists push forward, pressing against the barriers. Emily grips her father's hand tighter, but she's small, and the force of the crowd is strong. A sudden wave of movement surges through the sea of people. A group of tourists jostles forward, eager to capture the perfect shot. In the chaos, Emily's tiny fingers slip from her father's grasp. Daniel's heart stops. He looks down, and where Emily stood just seconds ago, there's nothing but a moving tide of legs and bodies. "Emily?" His voice is urgent, but it's swallowed by the chatter and excitement surrounding him. His eyes dart wildly around. Panic grips his chest as he realizes Emily is gone. Emily, now separated from her father, finds herself being pushed further and further away. Her tiny hands reach out, but no one notices. "Daddy!" she cries, her voice trembling, but the noise of the crowd drowns her out. Her breathing quickens. The excitement she felt just moments ago has turned into something else. Something cold and unfamiliar. Fear. The towering figures around her move like a wave, and she feels smaller than ever. She turns in every direction, but her father is nowhere to be seen. She swallows hard. She's lost. Guard Alexander Whitmore stands rigid at his post, his rifle resting firmly in his gloved hands. His gaze is fixed straight ahead, his face an unreadable mask of discipline. He is a Queen's Guard, a symbol of unwavering composure, a soldier of absolute control. The rhythmic stomp of polished boots echoes through the courtyard as the ceremonial movements of the changing of the guard unfold around him. Every detail is rehearsed to perfection. Precision, honor, discipline, the core values drilled into him through years of service. Yet, despite his stillness, Whitmore notices everything. Years of combat training have made his senses sharp, his instincts unshakable. Even through the disciplined haze of duty, he registers the shifts in the crowd, the rise in chatter, the movement of bodies, the energy of excitement transforming into disorder. And then he sees her, a tiny figure, her golden curls bouncing as she stumbles forward, pushed by the ever-moving tide of people. Her small hands reach out, grasping at air. Her wide, terrified eyes dart around, searching, pleading. Whitmore does not move. He cannot. His duty is absolute. No movement, no interaction, no breaking protocol. But something in his chest tightens as he watches the little girl struggle. He has seen fear before, in battlefields and war zones, but never quite like this. So small, so helpless, so lost. Emily is pushed forward again, this time closer to the barriers of the restricted area. Her small frame nearly disappears between the swaying coats and shifting bodies. Inside his helmet, Whitmore's jaw clenches. Does he intervene or does he follow strict orders? For the first time in his years of service, duty and humanity clash within him. He has sworn an oath, but at what cost? His fingers tighten ever so slightly around his rifle. The moment lingers, stretching into eternity. And then, Emily stumbles again. This time she is dangerously close to the road, where the approaching marching guards and ceremonial horses move in practice synchronization. One wrong step, one miscalculated moment, and his heart pounds. The choice is no longer his to make. It is now or never. Emily's tiny feet trip over the uneven pavement, her balance unsteady as she is shoved from every direction. Her eyes well with tears, blurring the faces of strangers towering above her. No one stops to help. Most are too engrossed in their own excitement, their cameras clicking, their voices blending into an overwhelming hum. "Daddy," she calls again, her voice now a whimper, but the sound is swallowed by the noise of the growing crowd. She stumbles forward, her small hands brushing against coats and bags, desperately trying to steady herself. The force of the movement pushes her further toward the ceremonial barriers. Emily turns her head frantically, searching for her father's familiar face, but he is nowhere in sight. Her breathing grows faster, panic settling deep in her chest. Then, a new sound fills her ears, the ominous clatter of hooves on stone. She freezes, realizing she is now dangerously close to the edge of the road, where the mounted guards are approaching in perfect formation. Her heart races. She looks around, desperate for safety, and then she spots a bright red tunic, the Queen's Guard, standing tall, motionless, like a fortress of safety amidst the chaos. Without thinking, Emily rushes toward him, her little hands reaching out. Maybe he can help. Maybe he will protect her. Emily's small, trembling hands reach out and grip the leg of Guard Alexander Whitmore, her tiny fingers clinging to the rigid fabric of his red tunic. Her sobs shake her little body as she buries her face against him, seeking safety. The crowd collectively gasps. Cameras flash, capturing the unthinkable. A child has broken the invisible wall of the Queen's Guard. Tourists murmur in shock, some whispering in hushed voices, others raising their phones, unsure if they should record. Whitmore feels the child's presence instantly, the warmth of her tiny hands against his uniform, the way she trembles, her muffled sobs vibrating against his leg. His training demands stillness. His duty is clear. No movement, no reaction, no breaking protocol. But then, his mind flashes back to something buried deep in his past. His own daughter, the one he lost, the one he never got to save. A sudden ache forms in his chest, the memory of holding her tiny hand, of promising to protect her, and then she was gone. Whitmore closes his eyes briefly. This is not the same child. But the pain in his heart feels just as real. Duty versus humanity. His fingers twitch, his breath tightens, and then he moves. His hand lowers ever so slightly, resting gently on Emily's small shoulder, steadying her shaking frame. The crowd erupts into another wave of shocked gasps. For the first time in his career, Alexander Whitmore has broken protocol. The sudden breach of protocol has not gone unnoticed. Security officials positioned nearby immediately catch sight of the incident. Their radios crackle to life as they begin moving toward the scene. Emily, still gripping Whitmore's leg, looks up and sees the officers approaching. Their uniforms, their hurried steps. It frightens her. Panic surges through her small body. She doesn't understand that they're coming to help. Instead of staying close to Whitmore, she reacts instinctively. She runs. But she runs the wrong way. Instead of heading towards safety, Emily dashes deeper into the restricted area, her tiny form slipping between the towering guards. Whitmore's pulse spikes. He watches as she heads toward the path of the incoming mounted guards, an area where she is not meant to be. This is no longer just a broken protocol issue. This is life or death. He has to act, now. For a moment, time slows. He sees the officers approaching, the horses drawing closer, Emily's tiny figure darting blindly forward. Then he makes his choice. Whitmore steps out of formation. A collective gasp spreads through the crowd. Phones are lifted, cameras rolling. Ignoring the weight of centuries-old tradition, he moves swiftly, his powerful frame cutting through the ceremonial stillness like a force of nature. With one strong motion, he scoops Emily up into his arms. The crowd, once murmuring in shock, now falls into absolute silence. For the first time in his career, Alexander Whitmore has done the unthinkable. He has broken tradition, but more importantly, he has saved a life. Meanwhile, Daniel Parker is desperately searching for Emily. His heart races as he weaves through the sea of tourists, his breath ragged. His voice is hoarse from shouting her name. Emily! Emily! But his cries are lost in the noise of the crowd. He grabs the arm of a security officer standing near the palace gates. Please, my daughter is missing. She's 6, blonde hair, wearing a blue coat. The officer gives him a sympathetic but rehearsed nod. Sir, it happens all the time. We'll keep an eye out. Stay near the visitor center. Stay near the visitor center? That's not good enough. His daughter is out there, scared and alone. Daniel's desperation turns into full-fledged terror as he hears snippets of murmured conversations around him. Did you see that? A Queen's Guard moved? I think he broke protocol. Daniel's stomach tightens. A Queen's Guard broke protocol? For a child? He turns to a nearby woman who's clutching her phone, her screen lit up with a video. What happened? What did you say about the guard? She glances up. One of the guards picked up a little girl. It was unbelievable. Daniel doesn't even wait for further explanation. A sinking feeling grips his chest. Could it be Emily? His legs move before his brain can catch up, pushing through the dense crowd toward the place where cameras are pointed, where whispers of a soldier-breaking tradition are spreading like wildfire. Please, let it be her. With every step, his pulse pounds in his ears. He's never been this terrified in his life. As Whitmore holds Emily, his senses remain sharp, scanning the crowd instinctively. A lifetime of military service has trained him to detect potential threats before they unfold. And then he sees him, a man in casual clothing, standing slightly apart from the rest of the crowd. His posture is tense, his gaze locked onto Emily, too focused, too deliberate. Whitmore's grip on his rifle tightens. This is not just an ordinary bystander. Security officials begin approaching, ready to take Emily to a safe area, but as they step forward, the man suddenly lunges forward, reaching for the child. A collective gasp erupts from the crowd. Whitmore reacts instantly. With one swift motion, he pulls Emily behind him, stepping between her and the stranger. His towering form acts as a shield, his years of training guiding his every move. The man hesitates for a fraction of a second, then turns and bolts through the crowd, before security can apprehend him. The realization dawns on Whitmore. This was an attempted abduction. The crowd murmurs in shock as security officers rush after the fleeing suspect. Cameras capture the moment, but Whitmore barely registers them. His focus remains on Emily, still clinging to his uniform, her tiny fingers trembling. His instincts had been right. Breaking protocol wasn't just about disobedience. It was about saving a life. Security officials, now fully alert, spread out, scanning the crowd for the fleeing man while escorting Emily back to the main area. Tourists watch in hushed murmurs, their phones still raised, recording the unprecedented moment. Despite knowing he may face consequences, Whitmore stays with Emily, shielding her small frame from the lingering eyes of the crowd. His protective stance is unwavering, his grip on his rifle still tight from the tension moments earlier. Then, Daniel Parker bursts through the throng of bystanders. His frantic eyes dart in all directions, desperation fueling his steps. And then he sees her, Emily. The breath catches in his throat. His body stills for a moment, his eyes widening. There, wrapped securely in the arms of a Queen's Guard, is his daughter. Dadari, Emily's voice, filled with relief and joy, shatters the last of his panic. He surges forward, pushing past onlookers, his chest rising and falling in deep, shaky breaths. Whitmore kneels down, his movements measured, and gently places Emily into her father's waiting arms. Tears spill freely down Daniel's face as he clutches his daughter, his hands running through her curls as if making sure she is really there. His voice trembles. You're safe now. You're safe, sweetheart. A long moment passes before Daniel looks up at Whitmore, his eyes still glassy with unshed tears. He swallows hard, trying to compose himself. You saved her. His voice is thick with emotion. Thank you. Whitmore remains silent, nodding once. His grip on his rifle loosens just slightly, his posture strong yet softer now. Tourists watch, some brushing away their own tears. Cameras capture what no one expected. A moment of pure humanity behind the ironclad discipline of the Queen's Guard. A brief silence lingers before the crowd erupts into thunderous applause. Gasps and murmurs give way to an outpouring of admiration. Tourists cheer, their phones raised, capturing what had just unfolded. Whitmore stands tall, his posture unwavering despite the gravity of what has just transpired. He does not acknowledge the applause. His duty is clear. Yet, deep within, he knows something fundamental has shifted. Security officers exchange glances, the weight of the moment settling on them. They had initially moved to contain a minor disturbance, but now, standing before them, they realized that without Whitmore's intervention, things could have taken a tragic turn. From the corner of his eye, Whitmore notices a group of high-ranking officers approaching. Their expressions are unreadable, but he knows what is coming. Breaking protocol comes at a cost. He braces himself, but then Emily waves at him one last time. Her tiny hand, once trembling with fear, now waves in gratitude, her face beaming with relief. Something inside Whitmore stirs, a feeling he hasn't experienced in years. A purpose beyond the rigid rules of duty. In that moment he understands, tradition was momentarily broken, but humanity prevailed. The scene fades, but the impact of what just happened lingers. The air around Buckingham Palace remains charged, as if history itself paused for a moment to acknowledge something greater than tradition. Now we turn to you. What do you think? Should tradition ever be broken in moments like these? Was Whitmore right to step out of formation, risking punishment to protect a frightened child? Or should duty and discipline always remain absolute? Have you ever been in a moment where you had to make a difficult choice between following rules and doing what you knew was right? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story as powerful as we did, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of courage and humanity. And finally, as the screen fades to black, we return to one last shot of Whitmore. He stands tall, back in his post, his face unreadable. He has returned to duty, but something is different now. A man changed by the weight of a choice. Tradition may stand firm, but sometimes humanity is the greater duty.